Hi there everyone, Lars here with another D&D video brought to you by Camille's Harem. Not just a podcast for novice writers by novice writers, but also a YouTube channel by novice writers for novice writers, because writing is an adventure, it's more fun with friends. And in this particular video, I want to briefly have a look at an aspect within Dungeons & Dragons that I feel has not been very well utilized for a wide variety of reasons, and that is the aspect of religion. Now, let me just first say, what really brought this up were two things in particular that kind of coincided around the same time. As I've been watching Critical Role Season 3, there are some developments within the current campaign where there's a lot of talk about the gods and whether or not the gods deserve to be destroyed or worshipped or forgotten or what have you. What have the gods ever done for us? And when you look at a lot of the stories within the Critical Role campaigns, despite the fact that there have been gods and demigods and all kinds of individuals who have intervened throughout the stories, for the large part, most of the characters are like, the gods, whatever. I could take them or leave them. In fact, I'd rather leave them because, my own independence is far more important than any sort of deity, which is a viable opinion, and anyone is free to go ahead and believe that. But I always find it really interesting that in any sort of setting where there are very real gods running around and doing stuff, that anyone would just be like, whatever, I'm just going to do my own thing. Dude, you are dealing with actual gods. Even if you believe that gods can be killed, there's a reason why they are the pinnacle. And the second thing that made me think about this was that in a current campaign of D&D that I'm playing in, I decided to do something really new. I've never before played a cleric, and so I decided I would play a cleric, and specifically a cleric who worships the ideal of war. So I get to make kind of a bruiser, a religious zealot, and within the party is another character who is not a cleric, but is basically a spokesperson for an eldritch god. And I was like, ooh, we're going to have a whole lot of fun. We're going to have two different religious points of view going on here in this party. We can have all different kinds of crazy conversations, and we'll just see where this goes. And the moment that my character began expressing his religious beliefs, everyone in the party, including the guy who's the spokesperson for another god, is just like, you're crazy, you're dumb, no, we don't want to talk about that. And any sort of conversation revolving around religion just kind of went out the window. Now then, that is something for the people at the table to decide for themselves if they're going to engage in those kinds of conversations. You can make a fantastically in-depth religious character to play, and you might never have any chance to really express those beliefs or put those beliefs into practice within the game. So, for one thing, it is very important, I feel, for the Dungeon Master to kind of set those rules, set those standards and expectations at the beginning if there's anyone who's playing a cleric, to be all like, okay then, so religion is going to play a large part then in this particular character's story. As a result, we will be dealing with certain religious entities, whether those be churches or individuals or cults or gods, and that's something to consider. You guys, it's left up to you guys whether you're going to be respectful, disrespectful, completely ignore these people, or if you're going to engage in them, because D&D is collaborative storytelling between everyone who's there at the table. However, I do feel that the moment that you introduce the subject of religion, you can't just simply ignore it. And it's something that I've kind of realized within the campaign that I'm currently doing, that the one guy who's like, this is integral to my character, that he is a spokesperson for this other god, and he's a bit of a charlatan. He's trying to trick people into worshiping this other god because that's what that god wants, while that character is doing very, very little of it. Now, then there's a little bit more that goes into it. Our characters are all imprisoned in a very intolerable, or I should say, very blissfully ignorant city that enforces that ignorance through laws, basically preventing everyone else from learning about any other religion other than the one that has been mandated as this city's official religion. So it kind of makes sense that we're not going to be like, oh, we're going to proselytize our characters' beliefs within this story, but you'd think that there would be some sort of discussion or what have you. Nah, there's none of that. So a really great opportunity is just kind of lost. And so this made me think, as I've been playing in my own campaign, and as I've been watching Critical Role, really, what are we possibly leaving on the table that we're not picking up that we could do with religion in a D&D setting? And what could this actually mean for our own stories that we wish to write? Well, here's an observation that I need to kind of put out there in order to better contextualize what I'm going to say. And it's this: within our own modern setting, and specifically I would say within a more modern Western setting, however, this is something that you can find all over the world really, is that a lot of people are shying away from religion, or at least any sort of organized religion. People can have all their own different beliefs, but do you really need a god in your life? Do you need a specific religious system in order to structure your life around? This is actually something I've brought up when talking about the war on modern myth, how we are moving away from these superstitious beliefs and a need within society to have faith. That's something that is becoming more and more archaic with each year. As a result, that particular mindset is often brought to the D&D table and by writers to their own books. This belief that you don't really need religion. And if you don't need religion, why do you need the gods? Sure, they might exist, and if they do, why do you need them? And this belief is enhanced by how we view old mythology, especially Greek mythology. All the gods except Hades are a bunch of jerks. And so as a result, any time that we look at fantasy religion, the gods are jerks, or they are power-hungry mongrels that are just trying to gobble up everything and force everyone to believe in them because that is how they can maintain their monopoly on power. Well, that is definitely one way that you can go with your story, and that is absolutely fine. That's absolutely viable, and if that's the way that you want to play your characters at the table, that's totally fine too. But I think that you can spice things up a bit by actually kind of expanding your view on how religion is practiced from multiple cultures and from multiple perspectives. As a historian, I love looking at older cultures where you had a cosmopolitan vibe, where you had people from all these different countries and all these different ethnicities and belief systems all coming together and forming a society that could at least function. It might not have been perfect, but you could find some balance. A really great example of this are actually in the islands of the Mediterranean, where you have the cultures of the Greeks, the Jews, and the Muslims all clashing and finding ways to combine where they could coexist peacefully. And oftentimes within these older civilizations, people were taught the different beliefs on that specific island. This is what the Muslims believe. This is what the Christians believe. This is what the Jews believe. This is what they bring to the table. And we will respect everyone's religion, because that way we don't have to constantly be stabbing each other in the front and in the back, which just makes us lose money and power. Better for all of us to get along, for all of us to support one another's religions, so that way we can all have stability and wealth in our lives. Now, that is a very secular way of looking at things, but that is a very viable thing that you can bring to the table. This is something I actually did in one of my own campaigns, where there's an entire temple block where you have all these different religions that are all equally represented by the empire within a specific city, and so anyone can go and worship wherever they choose. If the believers decide to get rough with each other, then the city sends in its police to break things up, because no, we're going to respect everyone's religions right here. And that was a really fun thing to do, because it really caught my players off guard, and they're like, oh, you mean no one religion's going to try to dominate us? We can kind of believe however we want? Oh, that's cool. And so the different players then actually engaged with the different religions in their own fun, unique ways, with some of them being firmly atheists despite the fact that there's gods around, others being like, I don't really care, and others engaging in their various forms of worship. And all of them were able to show great respect towards each other and great respect towards the NPCs, and it just fostered a very healthy dynamic at the table, which caught a lot of the players by surprise. But not only this, not only can you have this this secular view where, hey, balance brings wealth and healthiness and stability to our society, but you can also bring in this idea really from the ancient world of, well, what if we actually believe that all the gods are real? And what if they actually are? If that's the case, well, if I'm going to go and disrespect another religion, another temple, another god, I am owning the consequences that are about to come my way. This is actually something that makes the character of the paladins way more interesting, because if a paladin's like, my god is the one true god, they are bringing on a whole lot of other pain and hurt. This is the pinnacle of audacity, of haughtiness, and of self-righteousness, which could be very interesting then for a paladin to kind of get over. To learn that maybe a god doesn't need to be the best because they're already a god, but rather instead that they wish to bestow their blessings upon other people who wish to worship them, and that a paladin is meant to serve as the champion who shows what kinds of blessings a person can have should they choose that particular god. That's one route to take. Another route to take, and this could be really fun, is what if the gods go through a breakup? And what if the players actually happen to be the poor mortals caught in the middle who now have to act the part of counselors and be like, okay, everyone, let's come together. You're going to set your armies aside. You're going to set your armies aside. Your paladins are not going to fight each other. We're not going to have a war of champions. No, let's talk things over. Okay, there was once a time in which all the gods could peacefully coexist. What led to this? Oh, you cheated on your wife? Well, that was a scummy thing to do. What are you going to do to make that better? And you there, miss, what are you going to do to try to get yourself out of this bad relationship? Because unfortunately, what you are doing as gods is affecting all these other people. In a way, you could actually have a really awesome fanfiction moment where you could set right all of the atrocities committed in Greek mythology. And another thing that you can do within D&D is show how the beliefs of your specific religion, whatever you decide to have your character worship or practice, you can then explore what that does for that character when times get rough. This is actually something that I think a lot of people kind of forget when it comes to religion. Why do people hold on to religions in a time where we no longer need those superstitions to help explain the world around us? Well, it's because those religions bring a kind of stability and answers to their lives that help them to cope with just the way that life works. So you can actually explore through your various adventures, either through getting defeated by the bad guys every now and then, or through certain challenges that come along your way. What happens when a party member dies? What happens if you lose all your gold in a horrible bet? How could your character's beliefs help them through those challenges and find some meaning or some purpose to continue going forward? Those are the kinds of things that could be really fun to explore by further utilizing religion within your D&D game. Now then, me saying all this, I should also acknowledge that I know that you have all those horror stories of all those people who come and be like, there's only one true God, it's the Christian God, and my character is going to be a Christian, and all the other characters who don't believe in the one true God are all going to get smote. And this is coming from a player and a character who's not even a paladin or a cleric. And you're just like, shut up, you. There have been so many horror stories of someone who has tried to take their real world religion and shove it into the game and force other people to obey and live by it. And yeah, we definitely don't want that, because again, D&D is a shared storytelling experience. So you as the player, if you want to make your character way more religious, then think about what that actually means within a fantasy setting and with the gods that you have at your disposal, either from the manual or from your DM's homebrew. And if you are the dungeon master, definitely set up environments in which you can have those religious experiences for the characters and for the players. You're not trying to convert anyone to anything. Instead, you're trying to present them with opportunities to live and experience those different things, what faith can actually do for a person or do against them. So in order to do that, you can have places and moments where things are more cosmopolitan. You can have experiences where they have to go up against an oppressive faith. Or what happens then when they have just an interaction that's not necessarily necessarily antagonistic, but an interaction with someone of another faith who challenges that other players or characters' beliefs. This can lead to a whole lot of fantastic role-playing. It's something that I have seen in my own games, and it's something that always disappoints me when it's not done further, when other players at the table or the DM is like, nah, I'm just going to shut that down. Who cares about faith? Well, if you're going to use character classes like paladins or clerics, or also even warlocks who are bound in some kind of way to a deity or to a greater being, that definitely brings in the question of faith. And if you're going to entertain those possibilities, then actually utilize them. So the same thing also goes for writing your own stories. You can write your fantasy religions however you want. I'm not here to tell anyone that you must do this, because that's just not who I am, and that's not what Camille's Harem is. Instead, I'm here to encourage you that if you are going to use religion within a fantasy setting, that you have many, many opportunities and avenues open to you. You don't have to just go one way, which is the more popular way of that the gods suck and why do we need them. You can do a story like that, and that can be very interesting and entertaining. However, that's not the only route to take, and sometimes you might find a more rewarding take by actually exploring the potential and the worth of religion. One of the coolest examples I can think of in this regard is actually from the Mistborn trilogy, where it opens up with the main characters plotting to kill God. Then later on, one of the most religious characters in the entire series loses his faith for a variety of reasons, and he goes on a quest to disprove every religion that he has ever encountered. And he does a pretty good job of it, until he's actually forced to confront people of his own old faith, who then tell him, boy, you're going about this all wrong. You are taking your own experiences and forcing our religion to conform to your personal needs and your personal opinions. Which, sure, you can do, but that's not the system. The guy's like, well, I rally against the system. The system sucks. And they're like, okay, well, that's fine, but let us tell you where we are coming from. And as a result of that particular conversation and some of the other events that happen throughout the Mistborn trilogy, this particular character ends up becoming one of the most beloved and one of the coolest characters ever. And it's all because of his own religious experience, from going from a believer to an atheist, again to a believer. And it's just such a cool journey. And it's one that it doesn't matter what faith you have in real life, because this is all fictional, but it's something that anyone who has grappled with the question of faith can find some answers in, some answers for themselves. And just, again, the journey that this particular character goes on is absolutely tremendous. And that's something that I've definitely sought for when I've either played religious characters within Dungeons & Dragons or when I've written my own. It's so easy to turn your back on religion, and sure, again, you can go ahead and you can do that. But you can also engage in some really interesting conversations that you couldn't otherwise, and some very interesting experiences with deity characters if you decide that you want to explore where religion can take someone either in a positive or a negative direction. So those are my thoughts when talking about faith and religion and belief within a D&D setting and within your own fictional stories. Don't just shun it because there's all those horror stories out there, and don't just shun it because a really popular podcast like Critical Role does. Instead, if you want to play a religious figure like a paladin or a cleric, or even to a certain extent a warlock, do that and see where you can go by exploring those particular vows, that particular faith, that particular fictional religion, and how it interacts with the other players and with the world that you have put your story in. If you do it well and decide not to be a jerk about it or live up to the memes, I think you can actually come up with some fantastic experiences within the shared storytelling experience that really bring out the great potential within these types of characters, classes, and stories. So, with all that being said, if you're looking for more writing advice or more D&D advice, you can feel free to check out our other videos here on our YouTube channel. You can also head on over to our podcast, Camille's Harem, where we have way more writing advice and you get to hear from the entire harem. And if you would like to support us, please feel free to like, comment, share, subscribe to our channel, or even better, check out the books that we have published. Links for all of that and more are in the description below. And thank you for joining us on this crazy adventure that we call writing. And until the next video, y'all, tschüss.